Welcome to Fireside Giants. My name is Alex with my co-host here, Anthony Rivardo. My friends, my family. We have a preseason game tomorrow. Giants versus the Browns after a week of joint practices. Now we're going to get some live action. Hopefully get a good look at several key players for the Giants. I'm really excited to take a look at specific guys. We put a list of 5 players together with a bunch of honorable mentions that we want to keep an eye on during this preseason game. We know that things are really boiling down here to the wire. We have roster cuts coming up on the 31st at 4 p.m., so that's 9 days away, or really 10 days away here. And for the most part, there's a lot of guys that have an opportunity to make the team, but they're going to have to show some more. They're going to have to show some better play, some more consistency, and we're going to talk about a few of those players, especially some starters who we really need to see get into some form, get some reps, maybe even Daniel Jones. We want to talk about him as well, Anthony. Before we dive into the players that we are excited to watch tomorrow during the preseason game, how are you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing real good, and I will say I am excited to see if Sterling Shepard does suit up, if he goes out there, if Troy Hill, what's he going to do? Is he going to step up? Is he going to walk away? I don't know, man, but if we get another little brawl, might be a little bit bad. Actually, might not be something to celebrate in that situation, but might be a little exciting. But, of course, not really that worried about that. I'm more worried about watching these young players develop, seeing how they, perform in the second preseason game. Some of these guys that we're going to mention did have impressive performances in week 1. We want to see them build on that and continue to prove themselves as good players in week 2. And then, of course, there's some players on here that we thought didn't play up to the correct standard in week 1. So we want to see them maybe bounce back in week 2 and really improve on that. It was a really solid week of practice for the Giants. I did see a lot of mixed reviews, though. I saw a lot of people say the Browns won the week. I saw some people say that the Giants won the week. I saw people say the Giants pass rush was giving Baker Mayfield a lot of problems, but I also saw Baker Mayfield was throwing some nice passes and beating some coverages. There was a whole lot going on out there. Wish I could have, been there to see all of that. I know that they were live streaming some of it, but really those reporters that were talking were just way too biased towards the Browns anyway.
So biased.
Couldn't even really enjoy the coverage of the practices anyway. But still, good, fun week of joint practices. The Giants will be doing more joint practices next week. And, of course, we'll continue to update you with all of that. But I'm excited for Sunday, 1 p.m., Giants versus Browns. Let's get it.
Honestly, I heard that one of the reporters say that, Daniel Jones threw back-to-back interceptions. I don't know how you can possibly look at Daniel Jones and mistake him with Mike Glennon. You know what I mean? Glennon's neck is just so long. How could you possibly mistake a giraffe for an anteater? It's not possible. So I don't understand how on earth the reporters managed to mess that up and really twist it into a Daniel Jones' bad narrative, because everyone seems to try to do that. But the thing is, Daniel Jones actually had a great practice on Friday. He looked good. He was threading the needle. He had a couple touchdown passes to Slayton, to Sterling Shepard. And for the most part, I was pretty impressed, walking away, seeing some of the clips there. And he did really well in the red zone. He had another touchdown pass to Alex Bachman on the move, too. So that was a really nice thing to see. For the most part, I was happy to hear that the Giants really won that practice. Again, it's just a joint practice, so who really cares who won or lost? It's just supposed to be a developmental thing. Most of the guys on the roster right now are not going to be on the roster in 2 weeks. So it's really the depth pieces played better. Most of the starters weren't even playing anyway, or really were playing in a very minimal role. So it's nonsense to say who won or lost a joint practice. Who really cares? But at the end of the day, this preseason game is going to give us a good opportunity to get a good look at some big players here. And the first one I want to talk about is Andrew Thomas. Andrew Thomas has been a player so far that has really impressed. ESPN had him coined as a second-year breakout, and I think they're kind of on par and on pace with exactly what he's shown us this training camp period. He's really stepped up. The training he did this offseason to get into shape, he looks strong, he looks nimble and quick. Against the Jets last week, he played in 18 snaps. He didn't allow a single pressure. He completely dominated. And for the most part, that's exactly what we wanted to see from our bookend left tackle. Daniel Jones having that security on the blind side, totally essential for his success. The offensive line is going to determine how good Jones is moving forward. We need to see some more consistency from Andrew Thomas. Of course, it's just preseason, so until we see what he does during the regular campaign, we're not going to really know how he performs. But for the most part, I've been really impressed. This is a guy who will probably take the first series, if not the first 2 series. And the Giants will get a good look at him, get him some more reps, get him some more live action, especially if Daniel Jones is back there. And I think that timing between your left tackle and quarterback is essential, especially when it comes to dropbacks. I know they're working on it behind the scenes during practice, but when you're in a game against oppositions, when they're dialing up different style defenses, You're not always going to be coming across a 3-4 defense like the Giants, who are disguising coverages a specific way. Everything changes when you're playing different teams. So I really would like to see Andrew Thomas put another good performance on the board for us to kind of say, okay, now we're stringing together a couple of good performances here. We're getting confident, and it's really showing us the positivity that we needed to see, Anthony. This is a guy I'm really excited about. Andrew Thomas has all the skills. It's just a matter of continuity and consistency with his teammates.
100%, and you know that I'm a huge Andrew Thomas fan. I was a big fan of him coming out of Georgia in 2020, but of course, we saw a lot of struggles in his rookie season. But to me, week 1, I saw a lot of improvement. I really thought that he looked like a completely different player in week 1 of the preseason this year. Like when I watch his film from last year and I see the ways that he got beat, right? When he was allowing a pressure, he was getting beat very specific way. He was allowing pass rushers to win most of the time on the inside. He was getting beat towards the inside, and a lot of the problems were actually with his footwork and not really as much with his hands. This was completely different. When he did get beat in week 1 of this year's preseason, I saw him get beat around the edge, and I saw him get beat because of hand placement, which actually made him look a lot more like the Georgia product that I thought we drafted. Because as you know, there was Paul Alexander, I believe it was, the offensive line coach that discussed Andrew Thomas at length, said his technique completely different. He changed it completely since he was at Georgia. Yeah, Mark Colombo is actually a big reason why that happened. He did actually cause the entire offensive line to have the same problem where they all changed their technique. I don't understand what the Giants coaching staff was thinking there, but hey, it's been changed back now. Rob Sale has gotten them back on the right train, or on the right path, and of course, I think that Andrew Thomas's form is now way more similar to Georgia than it was to his rookie season, and that's encouraging me because now he's getting beat like he got beat at Georgia. So what we said was we need him to take that Georgia technique and just refine it, and he's going to be an elite left tackle. That's what we all thought when we drafted him. So now that he's actually using that technique again, we can finally refine it, have him turn this career around, and start to become a really good player in this league, because whatever form he was using last year, not good. Take that technique, throw it in the trash. Seems like that's what they've done. He looks like a completely new player from last year, and I'm really excited for that. So yes, I'm keeping a very close eye on him in week 2 and 3 of the preseason, and of course at the start of the regular season. I want to make sure that wasn't just a fluke. I know he had some great reps against Carl Lawson in week 1. He had a play where he threw a defensive lineman to the ground in pass protection. He looked really good, sealing off a man and opening up a hole for, I believe it was Corey Clement as a run blocker. Just super impressed last week with Andrew Thomas. I want to see him continue to build on that and continue to prove me right.
Yep, that's exactly right. We just want to see that more continuity based. But the next player we have on our mind is Azeez Ojulari. Of course, we all want Azeez Ojulari to be that bookend pass rusher on the outside linebacker core to really take this defense to the next level. I think having him is going to be a tremendous benefit for guys like Leonard Williams and Dexter Lawrence, because last year, we have Jabal Shared, a practice squad, we have Carter Coughlin, a 7th-round pick, and now you're upgrading to Azeez Ojulari, who really is that good of a pass rusher. He has a couple of really good moves. He has a really nice club move where he grabs. So essentially, like, if you're an offensive tackle, you're trying to get your hands there first. You're trying to make contact first, put that pass rusher off his rush, his path, or whatever it might be, and keep them in balance. Now, when guys try to do that to Azeez Ojulari, he has a tremendous move where he grabs that outside hand and he just clubs down like the Flintstone. And for the most part, I really like this move because his bend kind of goes right into it. So he uses those 2 clubs, he swings down, and then he uses that bend and speed around the edge. Now, Andrew Thomas, like you just mentioned, was getting beat a lot inside last year, which is a cardinal sin for offensive tackles. Most tackles, if you're going to get beat, you're going to get beat outside from a speed rush. Unless you're against a big guy like Myles Garrett who can bull rush you. But when you're looking at Azeez Ojulari, he is a speed rush guy with bend on the outside. He uses that club really nicely, and I'm excited to see him put it to the task. Last week you saw him make a really nice play against Mekhi Becton in the run game. He really shed a nice block, sealed the edge, and showed us that he can be a good factor in that run game and sealing the edge, because as an outside linebacker, that's your number one goal. You want to be able to seal the edge in the run game before you're a pass rusher. But he also is such a good pass rusher. Last year, he ranked first in the SEC in sacks and forced fumbles. He had 9.5 sacks and forced 4 fumbles. So, really good numbers there. He has a knack for getting after the quarterback and knocking the ball free, which is what I want to see him do this upcoming season. I want to see him use those hands, create some turnovers, show us that skill and speed that he has. And I think this game will give him a few reps to showcase that, because the Browns have a pretty good offensive line, and him going up against better quality talent is always going to be a benefit for him heading into the regular season. Already going up against good players, he can translate his skills a lot better, especially against some of those weaker offensive fronts. I don't know. I'm not sure if Denver has a good offensive line. I don't think they have a tremendous line whatsoever. So I think that that'd be a good.
Denver's offensive line is pretty good. Denver has
is it
pretty
good?
Didn't
they lose a guy? Didn't they lose Dewan?
Yeah, Jawan James got injured, but they still have, I believe it's Garrett Bowles or Garrett. Yeah, right, Garrett Bowles. He's pretty good. Yeah. And I can't remember. There's somebody else on the interior that they have pretty good as well. But
like left tackle or right tackle, because that's
Garrett Bowles left tackle, and I believe Jawan James was right tackle, and as you mentioned, he is done for the year. So.
Right. So hopefully they can match them up appropriately. I mean, Leonard Williams and Azeez Ojulari, that combo is what I'm looking at. That's the group, that's the pairing. And even Dexter Lawrence, too, and Azeez Ojulari. Those are the pairings that I'm like, they can wreak havoc in opposing offensive trenches and really collapse the pocket quickly. Because we already know Leonard Williams can do it by himself, but you add a good pass rusher to that, 1v1 against tackles or stunts and doing really unique things with that speed and strength combination. It's going to be exciting to watch, my friends, and really getting Azeez Ojulari these snaps now is going to help him translate to the regular season even better. Anthony, when you're looking at Azeez Ojulari, I know you like him because he was supposed to be, people were talking to him as the 11th overall pick.
I was talking about him as the 11th overall pick.
That's what I'm saying. Ended up going at 50, which is ridiculous. What does this time and experience during the preseason mean for you?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to see him kind of prove me right again. Same thing as Andrew Thomas. Prove me right that what happened last year was a coaching flaw. Prove that it wasn't, you just not being a good player. So far, he is proving me right. And I think Azeez Ojulari is also going to prove me right when I say that he was a first-round talent. I said if they drafted him at 11, I would have been okay with it because on my board, he was graded out as a 15 to 20 overall pick. And I don't think it's that huge of a reach to say that the guy who is a top 20 overall pick to take him at 11. I think that's fine. That's not a major reach, so I was okay with it. Wouldn't have been my favorite pick, but I would have been happy with it because a lot of people were sleeping on Azeez. He is a really good player. Like I said, I think that he is a first-round talent. We got him all the way in the second round, and I think that's going to be a huge steal for the Giants in the long run, and I do think he's going to show his impact as soon as day one. I mean, we saw it last week. That was one thing that I discussed a lot, and I discussed it with you, I believe, in the last episode, Alex. I said, when I did his film breakdown, this guy is an underrated run stuffer. Like, he can actually contribute setting the edge against the running game. It's not his forte. It's not his strength. His strength is being a speed rusher off the edge. But he does hold his own as a run defender, and we saw that when he had a tackle for loss or right around the line of scrimmage against the Jets last week. And I think we're going to continue to see that. I think instantly he's going to come in, be a decent run blocker, and be a better pass rusher than he is a run blocker. You mentioned that club move that he has. I love that. And I also think that he has tremendous bend around the edge. He's a super flexible, bendy, speedy pass rusher off the edge, and he's kind of exactly what the Giants were looking for in their edge rusher group. They were missing a specific type of player. Azeez Ojulari is that specific type of player, which is, again, one of the reasons I was fine with him at 11, because I looked at him, watched his film, looked at the Giants defense, watched that film, said, this guy's a perfect scheme fit. So then when they were able to land him in round 2, I'm like, how did we get such a perfect selection there? That was unbelievable. I'm so excited to see Azeez Ojulari suit up once again, after preseason week 1. See him suit up once again in Giants blue, and I do expect him to have a pretty significant impact on the defense in this upcoming season.
Yep, absolutely. I agree, and I think getting him this action early is going to only benefit him. So the next player we want to talk about, of course, Daniel Jones. This is a guy, some people may disagree. Some people may say, we want to see him in the third preseason game. I want to see him now. I want to see him tomorrow playing in the first series because, think about it. Patrick Mahomes just took preseason snaps yesterday against, Arizona? If Patrick Mahomes needs that preseason time to get into the flow of things, I can sure as hell guarantee you Daniel Jones does too. Because I know for a fact Daniel Jones is not as good as Patrick Mahomes, but Mahomes still sees the benefit and the value of getting the offense some reps with him under center. I think Daniel Jones needs it too. You cannot even convince me possibly that he doesn't need at least 1 or 2 drives, because at the very least they need to see some animosity. They need to see some unpredictability from opposing defenses. They know their own defense. They know what the Giants are sending at them, but they don't know what the Cleveland Browns are going to be sending at them in a real live game action. I need to see the offensive line. Can they protect Daniel Jones, or do the Giants need to trade somebody right now to upgrade that spot? We need answers that revolve around Daniel Jones. I am not fully convinced that this offensive line is going to be like the clear-cut OL for this team moving forward. I need to see more, and I need to see a sample size. And the third preseason game against the Patriots isn't going to be enough for me to really have a solidified opinion just yet. I personally want Daniel Jones to play at least just one series. That's all I'm asking for. One single series, just to get some action under his legs, just to get some familiarity, some comfort. Being the quarterback again in a live action setting. It's been quite a while. It's been a whole offseason. I think it's time that they put him in the game and they really trust him and they give him the reins, at least just for one series. See what he can do. Even if it's a 3 and out, I don't care. Just send him out there. And it's football. Injuries happen, but the probability of him getting injured is low, especially if they just scheme running plays. You know what I mean? Just run the football a couple of times. Just get him some reps. He'll be fine. Anthony, do you feel a similar way?
Yeah, absolutely. I want to see Daniel Jones play on Sunday. I don't care how long he plays. I just would like to see him suit up and get out there because we've heard a lot about him this offseason. And to be honest, we've heard a lot of mixed reviews. We've heard that he's commanding the offense really well. He's got a lot of zip on his throws. He's making some dimes. Then we've heard other people say, he's throwing a lot of picks. He's not reading the defenses right. It's been a mixed bag from these beat writers. And so I want to see him go on the field and show what he's really all about this offseason, We know that he's been working super, super hard. And we know that he's been improving, or at least trying to. But we want to see it translate to the regular season, translate to the field, and I want to get a glimpse of that in the preseason at the very least. I know he's expected to play like around the whole first half next week, but right now I do want to see him play this upcoming Sunday just so that we can get some sort of glimpse as to what he's like in this year's offense, see if he's more comfortable in year 2, and just get him ready, right? I just want to see him get ready for game speed. He's been throwing in pads, sure, but on the practice field, no one's allowed to touch him. He needs to get hit at some point. He's not allowed to be touched in practice. I know he got into a little bit of a fight when the Giants had that big brawl at practice. So sure, he might have gotten hit around there. But really, we do need to see Daniel Jones take a hit in the preseason, make sure that he's able to bounce back from that, get used to playing full-speed football again. Because it's been a while, it's been a long offseason. Yeah, he's playing in pads at practice, but he's not allowed to get touched during any of that. You're just not allowed to hit the quarterback. So I want to see him get used to some hitting, playing in the preseason, and so hopefully he can be comfortable once he gets to the regular season.
Exactly. I completely agree with you. And I think just Daniel Jones getting that live action, getting those snaps is essential. It's completely essential for him. But for the most part, I am excited to see, even the backups. I think it's a preseason after all, so really they're just trying to gauge the value of a lot of these roster bubble players. So we're not going to see Daniel Jones for very long when he takes the field. It's just really about his comfort and just getting onto the field, getting the sense, getting the feel, and being ready for it come the regular season. But let's move on to the next player, and that is Rodarius Williams. This is one of those guys who is instantly a fan favorite because he's a 6th-round pick. Everybody wants him to make the roster, but I will tell you this. He had a pretty rough game against the Jets last week, his first live action in the NFL, and he got picked apart pretty nicely. They had him in the slot a good bunch, moving him around, trying to test his different versatile attributes. But I think that he's done so well in practice, and he's really showed enough that he's going to be a roster player. This guy's making the 53-man roster, in my opinion. I think that's why the Giants felt comfortable trading, Isaac Yiadom. They really traded, got Josh Jackson, of course, but the Keon Crossan is more of a special teams move. I do think that this team, they also just waived Jaron Williams on an injury settlement. I think Rodarius Williams makes this roster. I think he's going to show us a lot better of a game on Sunday versus the Browns. Anthony, what are you thinking?
I'm thinking that Rodarius has had a lot of great moments in practice, but I haven't seen it translate to the preseason games just yet. Because in week 1, I'm not going to lie, I was very disappointed. I think I said that after the game as well. I was disappointed in the way he played. I didn't think he looked as good in coverage as I had expected or hoped him to. I thought that he would be a much better player in coverage because from everything that we heard in the practices, he's been locking dudes down. He's been taking wide receivers' names and then crossing them off his list. I got you locked down, whatever. But in that preseason game, of course, he got a bad matchup off the start with Corey Davis. That's kind of like being thrown into the fire. But as the game progressed and the competition got easier, he also didn't start to play that much better. I saw him, playing a lot of off coverage, getting behind receivers, not really making plays on the ball, kind of hate to say this, but kind of reminded me of DeAndre Baker. Now I understand one's a 6th-round pick, one's a 1st-round pick, so that actually should be looked at as a compliment to Rodarius Williams and maybe a diss to DeAndre Baker, considering he was a 1st-round pick and he was playing like a 6th-round pick back then. But just what I saw from Rodarius, what I know is he is a super hard worker and he's super motivated and dedicated to his grind. And we've seen that show up every day in practice, because if you are working hard in practice and making plays there, that's going to translate to the games one day. It didn't translate in this last game. He wasn't playing that well. It's his first ever action on the football field in the NFL. So I completely understand that. But how will he bounce back? This is what I was talking about at the beginning of the video. Some of these players didn't play well. I want to see how they bounce back. It's not necessarily about building on last week, but he also did have another strong week of practice this week playing against the Browns, seeing his older brother, or younger brother rather, Greedy Williams. But I'd like to see him bounce back in this next game and play much better than he did last week, because I did think that last week was a struggle for him, but still he recovered that fumble. He showed some things here and there that looked good. Now I just need to see him bounce back and build on what he's done in practice, and then hopefully feel a little bit more confident about him, because I do believe he makes the final 53-man roster. I just want to feel confident about him once he does.
Yeah, I think that's a main point that you just mentioned, and really it's the way he responded. Even though he got posted for 99 yards on him, the reason, or really the fact that he came back and recovered a fumble, almost took it to the house, like, he showed a positive. Even when they were littered with negatives, he managed to show a positive, and I think that says something about Rodarius Williams. He's fighting. That kid, I mean, he's not even a kid, man. He's 24 years old, almost 25 years old. He's one of the older draft picks in this class, and I think that he's not going to go down without a fight. And for the most part, they did use him a lot in the slot. They used 22 of his snaps, 34 out wide, 22 in the slot. He's never played the slot. He's a traditional boundary corner. So, when we're talking about that, you have to realize that they were trying to move him around. They do want to expand his value, because they're looking at him and saying, you need to have more value than just a boundary corner. You need to have some special teams application. You need to have whatever more that convince us that you deserve a roster spot. But I think he's on his way. I think he's going to be okay. I think he'll bounce back this game, or at least against the Patriots, and we'll see some positivity from him. But let's move on to the next player here, Matt Peart. I know Anthony, big advocate for Matt Peart. He had a tough game in his first outing. He allowed a sack, but again, running back had done a little bit better, chipped, done some things. He was a little slow with his feet. He's coming back from a serious back injury. That's something to keep in mind. He is a guy who didn't really have all of training camp to prepare for this preseason. But that live action, that's what it's for. This is what the preseason is for him to get that live action and then continuously get better and better and better and ramp up to the regular season. So just because he had a bad outing last week does not deter, my opinion of him. It does not convince me that he's a bad player. Just had a bad first outing. He only played the first series anyway. So, he could have looked a lot better. I didn't really hear anything bad from him during joint practices for the most part. So I think I'm still high on him. I'm still optimistic that he's going to be a solid right tackle for us moving forward. Of course, we still have Nate Solder, who hasn't really been practicing much either. But Matt Peart, let's see what he can do this week, Anthony. Is there anything that you're looking specifically at him and saying, I need to see more of him this week than last? I know you said his feet were a little slow. His pass, his pass protection was a little off, but maybe there's something that you're looking for specifically.
Just specifically improvement in pass protection, because he did grade out pretty well as a run blocker. And like I said when I did my breakdown on Matt Peart in my Tony's Takes episode, this is a player who was phenomenal in pass protection coming out of college. That was his main strength. Then he gets to the league, and his pass protection is a mess. But he's a better run blocker than he is a pass protector, and he was a pretty good run blocker last year, which was just confusing to see him make that switch. Why is what used to be his weakness his strength, and why is what used to be his strength his weakness? I'm not sure, but it looked that way again last weekend. It looked like he was a better run blocker than a pass protector. So I need to see him just show up in pass protection the way that I expected him to when they drafted him, because what I saw in college was just so impressive. For a guy out of UConn to be that quick on his feet, to be that good of a pass protector, was a super impressive thing, and that's why I said he was one of the gems in the draft. And I still believe that, and I still think there's time for him to turn it around. I think that this upcoming game will be a moment where he does turn it around, and he's going to have to, start playing better, okay? Like, this is not a position that's just handed to him. Nate Solder is in the fold. Like, if Matt Peart doesn't start to play well, Nate Solder might take the job from him. I don't want to see that happen. I don't think that will happen. You guys know I'm a huge Matt Peart fan, big Matt Peart supporter. Think that he has the potential to be the best offensive lineman on the team this season. I still believe that as well. I just saw him struggle on 1 or 2 reps last week. That might give me a little bit of concern, but ultimately I do think that he can be a good player. I just want to see him bounce back this week, have a little bit of a better performance, hopefully play more than the 11, I think, snaps that he played last week. Hopefully we can see them play closer to 20 snaps maybe, at least, and see these offensive linemen really start to gel, show their chemistry, see who plays the best and all that stuff. So, because all eyes on the offensive line. If we want DJ to have the breakout third season, it's going to come down to the offensive line and what they can allow him to do. So, again, Matt Parrott, huge believer. I'm not down on him just yet, but I do need to see him start to improve his game this upcoming week.
Yeah, and honestly, I think we just use Pert like rotationally because I don't really know what the right answer is. Do you know if it's Pert or Parrot? I kind of just say both.
It's
like
Parrot.
Whatever.
It is 100% Parrot. I know I've definitely told you it's Parrot before, but yeah, it's Parrot. Yeah,
there's so many
fine.
different names to remember here.
We're always talking about like 90 different people, so.
I know. I'm like Matt Parrott. Okay, it's Matt Parrott. I'll try and remember that from now on.
Matt Parrott, baby.
I always mix it up. I'm like, you say one way, I'll say the other way. One of us got it right. That way we don't both look like idiots.
I'm pretty damn certain it's Matt Parrott, but yeah,
I think
Matt
you're
Parrott
right.
is what I'm going
right.
with. Yeah.
Right. That's fair. But anyway, the last few players here, a couple honorable mentions to keep an eye on during this week's game. The first one is Trent Harris, outside linebacker trying to make his way onto the roster. I think he's a veteran of 3 years. This will be his third season. He's kind of been bouncing around a little bit. But he was with the Giants last year. He had a sack and a half, I believe. So he's a guy that, really is shining during preseason, during training camp. He's been, curating a couple pressures and during joint practices, making a name for himself. I've seen his name pop up multiple times over the social media stream. So I think that's a good sign for him. He's a guy I want to keep my eye on. Anthony, I know you want to do a whole video on Trent Harris soon. Hopefully after this game, we'll have a little bit more film to work off of.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to do a Trent Harris breakdown. I'm going to do one. I was thinking about recording it today, but it's probably better I wait till tomorrow. Let's watch him play one more preseason game, and then I'll do it in the coming days. But yeah, I want to make a Trent Harris video. I want to discuss Trent Harris because this is a player that a lot of Giants fans aren't too familiar with, despite the fact that he actually was on the team last year. So I'm going to get into all of that, where he came from, what his college background was, positions that he's played in the past, how he played last year when he was on the roster, and what exactly has he been doing in the offseason training camp to get to the point that he's at now, to where he's, I believe, second string on the depth chart, and we don't even really know who he is. So Trent Harris, of course, keeping an eye on him in these preseason games. He is a player that has been balling out all summer long, and I want to see that continue because maybe he's the sleeper. Maybe he's the guy that we've been looking for off the edge to be that really good rotational pass rusher. Maybe it's Trent Harris. I don't know, but I'm excited to hopefully find out in the coming weeks.
Yes, sir. And the next guy we have on our list, Tay Crowder, another honorable mention here. He's a player, we are all kind of gunning for to hopefully earn that starting spot next to Blake Martinez at the weak side linebacker position. I know Reggie Ragland has been spending some time with the ones next to Blake, but Tay Crowder, I think, has a little bit more of a utility as a pass coverage linebacker. He looks good. Last week against the Jets, he was around the ball. He only had 2 tackles, but the stats didn't show his true impact. He was around the ball. He was at least helping make plays. And I think that's what you want. Like from your linebacker specifically, as long as they are around the ball, they're contributing. That is something that you want to see from those guys. So hopefully Tay Crowder can elevate his stock this week. I would like to see him start over Reggie Ragland because Reggie Ragland seems more of a Blake Martinez reserve, in my opinion, replacing David Mayo's spot on a much cheaper contract. I would like Tay Crowder, who is younger, he's much cheaper, to really get that starting spot and lock it down for the future. Anthony, I assume you're feeling the same way about him.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Tay Crowder, and of course I also want to discuss Carter Coughlin, who's another guy that's kind of competing for the same position. That inside linebacker 2 spot, right? The kind of weak side linebacker spot, because we have our strong side, the inside linebacker, number 1, Blake Martinez. Phenomenal. But behind him, bunch of young guys who are competing. Of course, yeah, we've got Reggie Ragland as well. Devontae Downs is still a name that you got to keep an eye on because for some reason the Giants are just obsessed with that guy.
I do not want him.
Right, yeah. I feel the exact same way. But, Tay Crowder, Mr. Irrelevant last year, showed that he was more than relevant last year. Like, he looked really good considering he was the final pick in the draft. And Carter Coughlin, similar situation, 6th-round pick, or was he even a 7th-round pick maybe? Yeah.
7th-round pick.
7th-round pick, yeah. Giants draft class last year, instantly, pretty much all of them contributed and had a pretty significant impact on the season one way or another. So last year's draft class was phenomenal. And yes, I do believe a lot of that has to do with coaching, putting players in the best position to succeed. like Tay Crowder was put in position to succeed because he played a lot more pass coverage than run defending.
Same
Go
with
look at his
Carter.
run defending grades, weren't the best,
game against
but playing
the
in pass
Seattle
coverage,
Seahawks,
he was
woo.
pretty good. Yeah, Carter Coughlin had a sack in that game, a quarterback hit in that game. He played the QB spy, the QB contained, did all types of things. The Giants realized, oh, we don't want to just put him on the edge and have him pass rush. We want to move him around as a chess piece playing that inside linebacker position, that off-ball linebacker, so he can kind of more free roam, which is exactly what he's been doing. And like I said, watching him play that preseason game last week, Carter Coughlin, to me, it looked like he's been playing inside linebacker for 5 years. It didn't look like he just made this position switch. I was so impressed by not just the way he was, making tackles or whatever, but his instincts and how he was reading the field. He could see a running back leaking into the flat, and he just bolted over there and made the play. He could see a wide receiver coming across the middle of the field, and he just gets down there and stops the pass from, turning into anything. Like, the guy's instincts and football IQ are off the charts, and that's why he's able to make that transition and find success. And I do think that he will be a pretty significant impact player this upcoming season. Really high on Carter Coughlin. Again, pretty high on Tay Crowder as well. I think the Giants have a couple of young players in the same position that are really growing into something special.
Yeah, I agree, and I really want to see what they can do with Carter Coughlin because that's like you said, a chess piece there. He's someone you can move around, you can use as a spy, you can use as a run stopper, as a pass rusher for multiple spots, and I think that's the Patrick Graham MO. Getting more value out of players who traditionally play one position. You know what I mean? Like they're trying to get more out of Jabril Peppers, Julian Love. A lot of these guys are capable of playing in multiple spots. Even Leonard Williams moving from the 3 to the 4-eye to the 5. He's done so many things. He could play 0 if you needed him to. And I think that's really what they're looking at in these players. Like if we can move around guys enough, we can really confuse you can really confuse offenses. And create some unpredictability, and that's really what stands out to me with this defense. You can never figure out what they're going to do because guys are lining up in different spots every single play. What are you supposed to expect from them? It's kind of like, for example, the Patriots. I remember seeing something in I think it was a defender, and they were like, the Patriots are crazy because they line up the same way, but every play, everyone's doing something different. So you can never tell what they're going to be doing because this guy's running this route, this guy's running that route. The Giants can move guys all around, but they can also stay exactly the same, and then all these different guys can drop back to a safety role. They can play the run. They can rush the passer. They can stun. They can do all these different unique things to really create confusion. And that's what it all is about on defense. It's about filling space, creating confusion, and double teams on singular players. So I think that's really what the Giants are trying to expose and on their defense this upcoming season. And I'm excited because we have the personnel to be a top 5 unit. So hopefully that can come to the reality. But the next player we want to talk about, David Sills, had a good first game last week. He was obviously the best receiver, in my opinion at least. He made some nice passes. He almost came away with some big ones at the end there that we needed. End of the day, he was probably had the best hands for the most part. He showed some real flash, some nice releases on the outside. I know, Anthony, you're high on David Sills, and I think he's fighting his way onto the roster. I think he's going to make it, honestly.
I do too. I think that David Sills will make the final 53-man roster. This is a guy that I think has worked just as hard, if not harder, than everybody else on the team, and probably more people than just on the team. Like, the guy is tremendous with his work ethic, and I was impressed with him this past week when he played against the New York Jets. I believe he had like one drop, but he also had a really nice inside release to get free down the sideline for 30-plus yards. And he did that more than once. Like, he was getting open. He was separating. He's also big frame, 6'4" receiver. Can play the backup to Kenny Galladay if he needs to. Good player who I do believe has earned himself a roster spot already. Need to see him really confirm and solidify that. Really earn it for sure over the next couple of weeks as the Giants trim the roster down from, where are they at right now? Like 86 all the way down to 53. It's a lot of cuts in the coming days and the coming weeks, of course. So, yeah, a lot of guys are going to be losing their jobs. I hate that part of the season. I think that part sucks, but I'm really rooting hard for David Sills because I think that he's worked really hard and has earned the spot. So just need to see him really solidify that in these coming weeks. So, yeah, keeping an eye on him this week. Keeping an eye on him in the final week of the preseason. He's definitely earned his spot to the third week of the preseason for sure. But let's see how he does, and maybe he can be a guy that sneaks onto the 53-man roster. I really hope so because he deserves it.
100% agree. And hopefully this week we'll get another look at Shane Lemieux, who didn't play in the first preseason game. He didn't really partake in too much practice with the Giants against the Browns during joint practices. So we'll see if he makes an appearance here. We'll see if he gets some live action. I'd like for him to at least show something. I know they replaced him with Ted Larson after he had a couple of bad snaps on Friday, but we'll see Ted Larson. Hopefully we'll see some Shane Lemieux. And then, of course, Sandro Platzgummer. I think Platzgummer is how you say it. Platzgummer? I don't know. Another name I just can't figure out. There's so many freaking names. But like you said, like 86 people. How can I possibly know how to... I mean, he's Austrian, for Christ's sake. I have no idea how to say his last name. But he did have a 48-yard run last week. So that is a big thing to keep in mind when it comes to Sandro. I know he's another fan favorite. A lot of people like him. Is he going to make the roster? Probably not. Do I want him to make the roster? Sure. I mean... Anthony said before the podcast, some people are saying the Giants should carry 5 running backs into the regular season. God help me if they take 5 running backs into the regular season. We have enough freaking running backs for God. The NFL, the football gods will strike us again if we do this. So we cannot take 5 running backs into the regular season.
I have seen some fans say that they want to see the Giants carry 5 running backs on the final 53-man roster. I do think that's kind of weird. I understand Saquon Barkley's still working back from his injury, but 5 running backs is kind of a lot. He is off the pup list.
He has a roster
but still,
spot.
people are expecting him to have limited snap count in the first few weeks. So
that's
they're
why you
saying
got Devontae Booker. That's why you pay him.
It's why you paid Devontae Booker. That's why you have Corey Clement, and it's why you drafted.
A lot.
Yeah, I think that they hold 3 or 4 at the most. 4 at the most. I can't see 5, but some people think it'll be 5. But I am rooting for Sandro, dude. I think that Sandro would be really cool, part of the NFL's international exchange program. That would be freaking awesome to see this guy make the roster. I would love that. And so, yeah, I'm rooting for Sandro the same way all of you are rooting for Sandro. I thought it was really awesome seeing him rip that, 48-yard run. That was sick. And I hope to see him do something similar in this upcoming game. Exactly, yeah. Tight area, makes a guy miss, breaks down the sideline. And hearing Jason Garrett talk about it in his press conference, he just went into the nuance of the play and explained why he was just so impressed with Sandro on that play, which, of course, we could wrap up into a greater discussion about running backs and the importance of them and how you can pretty much find them anywhere, but
shut your mouth.
We won't do that. We won't do that. We are excited to see Saquon return to the field whenever he is fully healthy and able to do so, but I'm also excited to see during the preseason, during practices, how Sandro Platzgummer can play and if he can earn a spot on this final 53-man roster, because, again, another story that I'm totally rooting for and would love to see have a happy ending.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, Gary Brightwell literally hasn't made any impact, so it's totally possible they practice squad Gary Brightwell. I know they don't really like to do that for draft picks, especially 6th-rounders. I mean, we saw what they did with 7th-round picks last year, so I think those guys are pretty much, I don't want to say guaranteed a roster spot, but Platzgummer will probably end up on the practice squad himself. It'll probably end up being Saquon, Booker, Corey Clement, and Gary Brightwell, really at the back end of that unit. But those are the guys that we have in mind. I'll list them off one more time. Andrew Thomas, Azeez Ojulari, Daniel Jones, Rodarius Williams, Matt Parrott, I got that name right, Trent Harris, Tate Crowder, Carter Coughlin, David Sill, Shane Lemieux, and Sandro Platzgummer. So those are the guys we want to keep an eye on during this preseason game. Of course, follow us on Twitter tomorrow. I will be live tweeting the game. I will be posting highlights immediately after they happen. I have a really good way of doing that. So if you're not watching the game, if you want to watch the play over and over and over again, I'll have those highlights up within seconds of it happening. So I got you covered with that. Make sure to go follow me on Twitter, Alex Wilson ESM, and Anthony_Rivardo. Really hope you enjoyed this episode, my friends. Make sure to subscribe on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube as always, and we'll catch you guys on the next video.